Apologies, I was running a little bit behind. I'm doing training here in Virginia, and I just came back from Alaska, so I'm on weird. I haven't unpacked my suitcase yet for the last couple of weeks, so. It's, and Doug, you were out somewhere too, weren't you?
Man, I've been to so many places in the past couple of weeks. I don't even know where I've been because I've been in so many places. I've only been home like one day. I was only home 3 days in the month of September.
Yeah, I woke up at a hotel. I'm in another hotel room again, so that's
Good,
yeah.
good conversation for the topic between fatigue and
You are
just
not lying.
burnout.
You are
Yeah.
not lying. Yeah. So again, today's topic, I think we talked about it. Somebody asked for it as well, but we're going to be talking about burnout versus compassion fatigue. Because a lot of people get those confused. They're two pretty specific things. Um, but we wanted to touch base on it because it's something that the average first responder or vet kind of goes through. And it's important to kind of understand it. So again, I just spent the whole day teaching about it anyway, so I'm good to go. Good to go. So and folks, if you got questions or concerns as stuff pops up, please do me a favor and just throw it in the chat. I'm trying to see if I can monitor the chat. I literally ran up in the hotel room. I got done teaching like 20 minutes ago. So yeah,
No, I didn't know, think you were going to be on this quick.
yeah, I hauled ass, but I was working at a state police department, so I was hoping not to maybe get pulled over on my way hauling ass out of there, but it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, so I think it's important that we talk about it anyway, but we have two things that get brought up all the time: compassion fatigue and burnout. And they have some similarities. Bear with me here. Why am I doing that? Hold on a second. But yeah, they have some similarities, but it's kind of important to see they kind of converge in certain aspects, but they're two different things, and they're really kind of representative of like a vicarious traumatization or secondary trauma, where it's not necessarily you're facing the specific trauma, but you are kind of reaping the benefits or the not so great benefits of the trauma. Um, Again, I just want to make sure we get this over here. So here's one of the key differences. So compassion fatigue um, cons- comes up fairly quickly, and it's related to other people's trauma, just like burnout is with kind of doing the work. Um, but it stems from chronic stress in a specific environment. I will tell you where I see this a lot are folks that work ICAC or internet crimes against children, where they're dealing with a lot of online predators. They're dealing with just pretty some shady people with some pretty disgusting and like emotionally charged situations where you're dealing with some predators. And I think more importantly, like where I worked in homicide, um, you feel sad for the victim, but the victim's pain is over for the most part. Whereas in sex crimes or violent crimes against people that are still alive, you're dealing with a live victim. So there's all that rage and emotion and shame and all that goodness. Um, so compassion fatigue kind of focuses on the emotional impact of witnessing and caring for other folks and seeing what he or she is going through. Um, where when we talk about burnout, it's your burnout is like your gas tank. When it is completely done, you're done. And so you'll start seeing some significant physical changes and physical kind of manifestations or symptoms like that. Um, they're both pretty significant, um, and they do impact us on our mental health and our physical health. So I think the purpose of what we wanted to talk about today was what does that look like in real life? What does that look like? How does it come on? How do we prevent it? Or how do we deal with it when we get to the point where we're affected by it? So if you look at both of them, like the compassion fatigue side of the house, it's an overload of just of very emotionally charged incidents or circumstances that you're consistently working on. I worked with some of the folks over at the Boston area rape crisis center when we were doing stuff with our vicarious trauma toolkit, and I read some of their caseload. I read like a couple days of their caseload, and I was done. I was like, I can't deal with seeing. And my big thing is anybody getting with any kind of sexual assault or any kind of trauma like that or those crimes against persons. But if it's to a child or an elderly, I don't know, it's just like an extra little bit of suck to the whole thing. It's horrible. But like um I see it a lot with those folks that do the ICAC work, see a lot with the violent crimes against people. Whereas the burnout, I still see that with that. You can get the burnout from there, but I see burnout with a lot of the day-to-day operations of all the other aspects of first responders and law enforcement, just doing it day in, day out. And it's just chronic workload. Most agencies right now, Doug, is your old agency, are they up to par? Do they still have all the people? Or are they down some people?
Oh no, they're down. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're down. Yeah, all the numbers are down here.
Yeah, we
You
had
talking about staffing, like staffing,
yeah.
or just in the specialized units? Yeah, and staffing. Yeah, I mean, look, our governor gives you 15 grand just to come become a cop in Florida. If you're a cop and you come from another state to Florida, they give you like a $15,000 check, bonus check.
Do you have to stay there for a little bit? Because I'll head down there and grab a job real quick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
it's 15
yeah,
grand.
I'm gonna sign back up for that 15K. It ain't even worth it.
So if you can imagine the job's tough enough with the manpower issues or the staffing issues. I was told, by the way, that you can't say manpower anymore. Someone told me that today. They're like, it's called staffing power. I'm like, okay. I wasn't trying to like isolate anybody, but anyway.
It's called
Um,
mankind. Remember the term mankind?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know, but it's like so you're doing a stressful job anyway. That kind of takes a lot out of you, and I imagine working, especially working with a specific kind of community, whether it be elderly or children or just kind of just whatever community that you're working with. If you have those same people at the house, like I worked with a guy that had a special needs child, and I don't think you can call it special needs anymore, which is weird. I think it's something else. I don't know what it is, um, but he was handling a case where a special needs child was a victim of a pretty gruesome violent encounter. So he immediately kind of sees his kid in that victim that they're dealing with, and it becomes like a little bit more emotionally involved in it. But imagine doing that every day for years, for decades. Because most of those folks that work those violent crimes kind of tend to like stay, they kind of gravitate towards that kind of stuff. So when that happens, you'll start seeing people kind of isolating. Like you ever run across some of the guys or girls that you work with on the job that are working in those places, and like some days they're really like happy go lucky, and some days they just like they look like zombies. That's because the day in day out, and then that's not even talking about the court, going to court, maintaining that heavy caseload. The majority of the folks that work in like SVUs or special victims units, they're usually the lowest number of staffing with the highest caseload. So on top of that, they're just working double more than other folks, which is crazy. I was always curious about why that wouldn't get staffed more. But the other thing is you have people that don't want to like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't work those cases. I had to work those cases as an interpreter a couple times, and I wanted to jump across the table and choke this guy because he was dealing with a mentally or not I don't know what you call it, like a mentally disabled 16-year-old or 17-year-old, but they had the mental capacity of like a 10-year-old or 12-year-old or something like that. I forget what it was. But I was having to talk to this guy and discussing I had to like befriend him, so to speak. Again, when you're doing interrogations, like I was like, dude, I get it. I get she's a woman for all intents and purposes, and like just dying inside, just like, ugh, I can't believe I'm saying this stuff. But I was like, but he's like, yeah, you get it, you understand. Like she's a woman, I'm a man, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I can't. This is miserable. And that was just one case that I had that one time where I got brought in to do the be an interpreter for. Dude, I couldn't. And so the guys that I was working with, guys and girls that I was working with, some days they would be like happy go lucky, and then a good portion of the time they were just zombies, and they would like detach. Um, I was talking with one of them who's kind of seeking help through the peer program, and he's like, I get home, and I mean, what do you do? Do you talk to your spouse or to your kids about the horrific things that you just saw or that you just had to deal with, with involving, that kind of crime? So they kind of keep it to themselves. So what do you do? So that, and again, so that's a really good example of like the compassion fatigue side of it, as opposed to the burnout. Where in the burnout you see that there, but you also see it in the day in day out. Like I had this one kid that came into my office, and he was like, nothing crazy happened. Like somebody on a traffic stop just came up to him, or when he was on a traffic stop, the person he pulled over was like, I pay your the same routine, same bullshit. Like I pay your salary, you work for me, blah blah blah. You're a pig. All cops should die. Blah blah blah. Happy. We hear that all the time. But today, that one day that he was talking about it, he came into my office. He's like, I can't do this anymore. This is I can every day and I think at the time he'd been working like 17, 18 years on the job. He's like, every day, same thing. He goes, almost want to punch one of these people in the face constantly, just like, you suck, you're horrible, you're a sellout, you do like constantly. And so he's like, I'm done. So, but that's that chronic, I call it like the death by a thousand cuts. And,
Yeah.
or I started seeing that a lot like during COVID when just constant shift work and kind of interacting with also the fear of like, am I going to be wrapped up in getting sick or dealing with some other stuff, and just all the grief, and everybody just constantly like in a bad mood because of the whole situation and the whole period of that time. Um, so I saw a lot of folks like, is this even worth it? Is this, do I even like, why even do this job? And burnout, you'd just be like, I'm out. And you see a lot of people kind of just leaving or quitting, and we see that in all different kinds of jobs, but specifically like first responders. So what do you do? So that's the big question. So there was a program, and I don't want to misquote it. It was there was a couple pretty large agencies that kind of pioneered peer work, and they set up a program where if you worked in one of those units that was pretty high stress, and that after there was like a time period, like every 3 years they change people out, which I don't totally agree with because you're losing all the experience. That'd be like you get on a SWAT team, right? In the first 3 years you're on a team or in a tactical unit, you're just learning. You really are just learning. You don't get
Carrying a cooler.
you're just getting proficient at like year 5 of doing this kind of work. And then by year 10, you're a little bit more seasoned, stuff like that. So I, I don't agree with just pulling people randomly out. But this one agency, they, if you needed a break, they would allow you to transfer from the SVU, Special Victims Unit, to like a general assignment unit where you're dealing with like it's like you're catching all these different cases. So somebody steals underwear from Walmart, or somebody shoplifts, or somebody vandalizing car, like general crimes, nothing like robbery or homicide or auto theft or anything like that. But it gave them a break from having to deal with the day in, day out of those really toxic kind of crimes, or those environment. So they got a break. But here's the thing: somebody else could do a rotation and come in just to get a feel for it, so you can start training people up to start doing that work, to almost like a trial period. Like if you wanted to go to SVU, which people do, some people want to do that kind of stuff. Um, they give you a taste of it. So they do like a switch. So like somebody coming out of a general assignment or a general catching squad will then uh, go to the SVU unit or whatever special crimes or whatever they call it now on any one of them, right? And so you'll have like 90 days, 120 days, or however you want to work there, and then they switch you back out. Now, if you're the person that needs a break from it, and you start realizing, all right, I, I can't go back to there, they're good with you. But if you wanted to come back earlier or just maybe a little bit later, you wouldn't be in trouble. There'd be no penalty. So that worked out really well. So that's a really good way to kind of combat the passion fatigue. But what else? What else you can do, and this works with the burnout as well, is take a break. You know how many cops you know never take a vacation. There's loads of. I never took a vacation. I should have. I think I only got a vacation when I got married, and that was just a couple, like it was a week or so maybe. But I was like so heavy into work. But like, take a break. Like, do you ever like? Well, I don't know what
And
you do. Like,
suspension doesn't count either.
yes, yeah.
'Cause I was like, well, I was put on break a couple times in my career, but
But like, if you took like a vacation and just like, and by the way, you don't have to go anywhere, but like over where you were at, take a week or two off, and just every day you go out surfing or go playing soccer or doing models or making cakes or hanging out with your family, your kids, or just like those staycations and stuff like that. But using that time and just taking a break from work itself. The other thing is, and this again, we're kind of staying on the compassion fatigue side for right now. Talk to somebody, talk to a friend, talk to a peer, talk to your family, talk to your spouse, talk to your partner. Um, doesn't have to be about the specifics of what's going on, but maybe talk about it to a clinician. You know what I mean? Like get it off your chest, like unburden yourself with all the shit that you're having to deal with on a day to day kind of timeline. So that I mean, to me, that's those are just kind of the basic. But the compassion fatigue part of it is, I think, bothers people the most, or is more not more significant, but somewhat significant, is that you're passionate about what you do, and you want to help this specific segment of the community or demographic or age range or whatever, that you care so much. So you're kind of putting yourself in harm's way to care for it. It's just not any different than when you were dealing with your son. You know what I mean? Like you saw that the conditions and everything was going on, and you just put so much into it that it starts wearing you down. But it kind of comes on pretty quickly. Um, Whereas the burnout, just it's the constant fatigue, and you don't so much care about it as you're doing the work, you're doing the job. Not that you don't care about your job, but you're not as passionate about it, if that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I always looked at it like this, and between the two of them, with compassion fatigue, it's an emotional wear and tear on you. We used to say that about you, me and the rest of the guys, because there was an era in our lives where you were so busy dealing with guys every day. You were working for another company and they
Mhm.
were just dumping everything on you.
Yeah,
And you're dealing with horrible cases every day, all day long. And me and the guys would always say, man, like Chris is absorbing all their traumas. He never gets a break to get rid of them. And unfortunately, you're still in that position. But
yeah.
we all are. And which is kind of a double-edged sword because in the mental health world, we talk about all these avenues and things you have to teach cops. And, I use the terminology in my presentation, emptying out your wheelbarrow, carrying around this
Yep.
heavy wheelbarrow full of trauma your whole life, your whole career. And so in the compassion side of it, it's diving into it because you feel for that person. And then sooner or later, you're just constantly absorbing trauma. You're hearing stories every day of horrific stuff. I mean, here's a good example. Go to a PCIS. I go to PCIS is obviously Survive First does them for the state of Florida, and I've done 8 this year. And we usually have anywhere from 35 to 40 people in the class. And so the other day, we had 40 people in there. and story one. So everybody tells their story on the first day, right? Now, is that how most of them go, Chris?
Yeah, yeah. So everybody tells their own story or their own situation. What brought them to the table the first day?
So story one tells. I'm like, holy crap. I feel so bad for this couple. Then story two comes. Then story three and story four. By story four or five, I couldn't stop crying because every time a story was told, I could relate to it, or I've heard this, or I've heard that. And it's so overwhelming. And but you stay in the fight because I want to save my brother
Yeah.
and I want to be here for him. I don't want to turn my back. And it just becomes emotionally overwhelming. Where burnout, you're just you're burned out. It's over. You've run out of gas. And um, in a conversation the other day, talking the same subject, I always try to pull shit out of my ass to relate to the person I'm talking to. And so this particular person, I said, I used an F1 analogy. I go, listen, the sickest race car on the planet is a Formula One Ferrari, or at least one of them.
Mhm.
If you don't know anything about it, you can look it up. But a Formula One Ferrari, just the equivalent of the pinnacle of race cars. They're insane. Even that car needs a tune-up, needs an oil change after the race, needs a tire change. It doesn't matter what you are, what kind of equipment, even the space shuttle, which was one of the coolest things I've ever touched in my life. I literally got to go inside of it. It needed to be overhauled every time it flew into outer space. It's the same thing with your mind and your body. It doesn't matter who you are, what your training's like, what your educational background's like. You're going to need a tune up. You're going to need to come up for air. You're going to need to breathe. And if you don't, you're not doing anybody any good. As we always say in our presentations, Chris and I learned this back in Spec Op days. You cannot save somebody else if you can't save yourself first. Some
Mhm.
people say, put the oxy, how do you say that word? The
Oxygen mask.
oxygen mask on first on the airplane. You have to save yourself before. And if you're not, and if you're not dealing with your compassion, fatigue, and burnout, then what you're doing is you're giving half-ass results and you're giving half-ass care, you're giving half-ass answers. And when you do shit half-ass, you get half-ass results. And in this industry, there's no room for error. There is no room for half-ass work or half-ass results because that could get somebody killed. So there's really an important factor to this.
So I think one of the key different when I'm looking at folks, so like the big differences that I see are with burnout, you see a lot of anger, a lot of cynicism, frustration, like, man, this is bullshit, or I can't believe this is ridiculous. Where on compassion fatigue, I see a lot of sadness, um, grief, dread. It's more emotionally, I don't want to say it's more emotionally driven, but it's more some of the caring symptoms. You become, I guess, a little bit hyper aware or hyper aroused, um, but it kind of numbs you. So, like, what should be important sometimes doesn't seem like it's that important with like family members, like looking at you and kind of observing you. Uh, but we also see some of the signs is people. So there's a real close tie to addiction with compassion fatigue. I mean, there's some connection with between burnout and just drinking or using or whatever, just to get over, just to kind of calm down and relax and wind off the day or the whatever you're working on. But you'll see a lot of folks trying to self medicate so that they can continue to do the job despite being kind of run down, right? And being kind of like over it to a certain degree. So some of the symptoms for burnout that we see are like fatigue is number one. Cynicism is huge, but you talk to any cop or first responder or vet that's been in the job or doing their work for any given amount of time. There's when you deal with the worst people of society, or just the people that are in trouble all the time, or just in pain all the time, and you get such a jaded look at life. So you see that cynicism, um, maybe overreaction to other folks. Like you, so I use this example a lot. If you're every day you're walking down the hallway between the hours of 2 and 3, and somebody in a red shirt jumps out of the corner and punches you in the face. From that point on, if that happens more than once or twice, A, you're an idiot for walking down the same hallway, but also uh, you're going to be a little bit suspect of people with red shirts because you're going to associate that with the pain and the suffering that goes along with it. Same thing with the folks that you deal in day out that are victims. I got to tell you, dealing with victims day in day out, like living victims, it's you take that on with you. So the burnout of it is you just negative reactions, like, or you'll minimize it. Like somebody's coming to you and you've just been all same complaint and this and that. You're like, yeah, whatever. All right, cool. Or you're negative towards somebody a little bit, just like sensitive to the whole thing. Like, yeah, you're lying, or everybody's lying, and everybody's bullshitting, blah blah blah. And then you just withdraw from the whole thing, and then you just kind of like going through the motions at work, just not even putting any kind of heart into it. You're just like, we used to joke, those guys, we called them, they used to hit, it used to be 8 and hit the gate. Like that's all they did. They would do 8 hours, or now it's like 10 or 12 hours, and be like, I'm out. And then they would go. And you see that we saw a lot of folks leaving investigations to go back to patrol, because it was in investigations, you have so much stuff that carries over, that they just felt comfortable working the street, whatever little small sector or large, whatever they're working. Because when they're done, they go home, they're done. Like if you're working as a detective, or you're working narcotics, or you're working homicide or violent crimes, you're on somebody else's clock. My old boss used to say, there ain't no clock on the wall when there's a homicide, meaning
That's the truth.
you ain't going anywhere. Or if you're doing fugitive work, chasing people down, it's just one of those things that you're on a different timeline. So going back to patrol, taking a break, some of these folks are like, I'll do patrol all day long, which again, I'm not talking bad about patrol or just some mundane work, but it might cause a little sanity. But I see, like, on the compassion fatigue side, you'll see, like, well, you see it on both ends, but I see it a lot on compassion, like frequent use of sick days. Um, at home, you'll see a decreased level of intimacy because they are just emotionally just gassed out, right? So it's almost better to not feel anything than feel some semblance of kind of stuff. But the other thing that you'll see again with like compassion fatigue, you'll start seeing some like somatic, or you start seeing some physical. I tell people all the time, in doing all this work with mental health, certain people, depending on who you are, you'll have, I call it like the target organ. So like when some people get stressed, or they're constantly doing stuff, and some people will have lower back pain, or their shoulders hurt, or they'll get headaches. Some people get irritable stomachs. Some people get like a sour stomach. Some people get aches and pain. Like we have a target organ, or target that like when we're really super stressed, it kind of affects us in a certain way. Um, but the big things I see are like headaches, muscle soreness, skeletal, significant fatigue. And so when they're fatigued, what do they start doing? I'd like to get sponsored by Red Bull. That'd be great. So they take like energy. I gave up drinking, but I can't give up the Red Bull. Sugar free,
Well,
so it's healthy.
you traded one for the other. I always say that to the guys because for the people who don't know Chris like we do, uh, Chris will drink that tall boy, two or three of them a day. At least I've witnessed that, and then go right to sleep at
Go
10
to
o'clock,
sleep.
or go run at 10 at night, and then smoke a cigarette while he's running, and then come home and go to sleep.
I just did that. I ran yesterday. I did that in Alaska. I ran, and I had a really decent run. And then I remember I was like, I can't wait till this to get over. And then I got done and I was outside. I was like, having a cigarette. It was phenomenal. Those are the best cigarettes. And by the way, I only run so that I could smoke more. That's all. I'm healthy like that. Um, so like with the burnout, and again, so they're not exclusive. You'll see some of the same symptoms and the signs of burnout fatigue, and they'll kind of like blend in. Um, but you'll see uh, physical problems on both ends. Um, you'll see somebody with compassion fatigue or some of the symptoms because they mirror PTSD symptoms, post traumatic stress symptoms as well. Uh, again, it's the I almost want to say like compassion fatigue is I care so much I'm burning myself out kind of thing. So that's where they kind of blend in a little bit. But I want to try to figure out a way that I can continuously help and help and help, even though I'm exhausted and tired and all that good stuff. The burnout is just you don't give a shit anymore. You're like, fuck that. I'm done. And you kind of quit, which I've been there in certain spots where I was like, everything I do is a problem. Every time I deal with this, if I and there used to be a when I used to go to all the police departments, we travel all over the place. In the bathrooms, you'll see somebody write down almost in every police station, no arrest, no problems. Small arrest, small problems. Big arrest, big problems. So that's that cynicism. That's like every time you do something or put in some work, the more you do, the more you get kind of put yourself in harm's way. And it's no different like with internal affairs. We got so we were my job in narcotics when we were first initially working was targeting repeat offending drug dealers, like heavyweight, repeatedly. They've got so much time hanging over our heads. So we're like, why not get these people that continuously keep on doing that? And these folks that are getting ready to do, I don't know, 360 months, 420 months in prison, federal time. Guess what they don't do? They don't go in quietly. They fight. So when they fight, we got to do use of force, and it is what it is. This is not pretty work sometimes, but you'll be thrown down with a handful of folks. And I remember one year we got pulled into internal affairs, and they had like 6 or 7 mugshots of the guys that we arrested, and they all like somebody's got a black eye, somebody got a bruise on the face, and stuff like that. And they're like, they're like, you guys are out of control. I'm like, how are we out of control? They're like, by the way, there's no bullshit. This is what the investigator said to us from Internal Affairs. He goes, you're targeting drug dealers because you know they'll fight. I'm like, what? I'm targeting repeat drug offenders because they're breaking the law repeatedly. You know what? They do fight. I would much rather have them give up and just like, all right, you got me. But they don't do it. That's almost like saying, I'm not going to arrest somebody for murder because I know they're not going to want to go in. So what am I going to do? Just arrest people for jaywalking? So it's that kind of thing, day in, day out. Then I'm like, why even arrest? Why even arrest anybody? Why don't I just sit back? Because there's guys on in departments that just kind of coast. They kind of take their time, and they're like, I call them like they're like the extras in a movie where they'll just kind of take up space and they're not doing anything. And if something needs to happen, they won't start it or initiate it, but they'll wait for you to start and initiate it, and then they'll help you, just so they're kind of hands off about it. So it's those things like that that get it just it's mind numbing, and so we see that in how we react. And I remember going home after shit like that. Well, I'll even talk about just the more recent stuff. And what Doug was alluding to. I went to I think it was like at my wit's end. I got really sick and I was in a bad way after drinking. Um, I got I was getting hammered by. We'd like you to do that for where I was working. They were like, we'd like you to do this. We'd like to give you more responsibility. Hey, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And I'm dealing with that, and I'm dealing with folks in crisis. And I got sick. I drinking too much, too much, and I was drinking just to fucking forget about everything and just kind of just consume as much as I could. And then I remember I got home and I'm like, I'm done. I remember saying I had this conversation with Jill, my wife, and I was like, I'm done. I'm so fucking tired of being so constantly bombarded every day, day in, day out, trying to help people. And we don't want to not help people because, you like somebody trusts you, Doug, and like, Doug, can you help me? I don't care if I'm sick and dying. I'm still going to help that brother or sister, cop, fireman, dispatcher, veteran, or first responder. I'm going to do that. But the problem was the work environment that I was in was just, it was toxic. And I promised myself, I said, I am never working in this field again. But that's what I do. I mean, myself, Doug, Raul, we love helping, the folks that we're very familiar with. And I remember I had no plan. I had no job. I mean, I had my retirement, but I had no plan, no job. And it was like that for quite a while. And and the funny thing is I just replaced the stress of the job with the stress of, hey, I need to work. I need to get money for my family and all this good stuff. But I was to the point where, fuck this. I'd rather be homeless than deal with the stress of, because you do something and then they want you to do more. Like, all right, you did this, let's do this. Or you do this and let's do this. And so I'm working with that. I'm also working with, at the time, with the VA, which is, and this is how I call the VA. If the post office and the DMV had a kid with behavioral issues, that's the VA. It's a fucking nightmare. Not to like shit on them because
Yeah,
the
but you're
people that
right, actually.
the people that work there are great, and I don't blame them. How do you deal with 5,000 assholes that are struggling and in crisis, and you're short staffed? And so so that's another example of the compassion fatigue, the burnout kind of in effect. But I will tell you, there was a relief, an absolute relief when I left, dude. I called my boss when I got back from whatever I was doing. I said, hey, FYI, I'm done. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am done. And then, what do you need more time off? Can we help you? Can we do this? No. Beyond that, we're way beyond that. That was for me. It was like a lot of compassion too, because I still wanted to help, but a good portion of that was, fuck this place. I'm out. I'm
That's the
out.
burnout.
And well, that's the problem when you get a numbers driven kind of job, and you
Yeah,
have to. It's almost like you're justifying your worth that's not how this works with us. Like, I'm
and that's
not
the
about,
issue.
if you need help, I'm here to help you, but I'm not going to create this phantom like people need help kind of thing. Like, oh, you kind of need help, and what kind of help? No, if you don't need help the way we can provide it, then that's okay. If you need lower level care, then get lower level care. But like it's like a heads and beds kind of mentality that I'm not down with. It can get exhausting. Um, and so again, so all these kind of things change you, and they kind of, I don't know, you become that grumpy old cop or fireman or medic or vet. Oh God, I seen guys, I mean, just shit deployment after shit deployment after shit deployment. And the only thing keeping him or her going back to these shit deployments and not just being like, fuck this, I'm out, is, well, they'll get in trouble if they don't. But primarily it's, most vets will talk about that. It's, they're not doing it for anybody other than the guy or the girl next to them. They're not doing it. And most of these guys and girls don't care, like in cops, first responders and otherwise. I would work until I died if it meant I'm helping somebody else out. But then the problem is you don't want to get help for yourself. You know what I mean? You'll help everybody, but you won't help yourself. So I think one of the good things that we could kind of take away is, I think people need to be a little bit selfish, take care of themselves. You know what I mean?
Or or ask a clinician. Yeah, I recently had this conversation with somebody. We were talking about the same very thing, and they said, "Well, what about a clinician? That's all they do for a living is." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know how they do it. You heard me on the last show. Hats off to you guys. You guys are freaking animals." But I gave him this answer. I go, but a clinician is trained in that. We're talking about the people who aren't trained in that. I go, it's like a dentist. Most dentists have nice teeth. Most doctors are healthy. Would you rather be in a shootout with me on your side, or would you rather have your therapist on your side? We all have a certain trait. So I always tell them, ask a clinician. They're professionals at this. Now, I can't give you that answer, but they know how to probably deal with it a lot better than we do.
I think they know the resources, and the other thing is, um, it's individual. Like me and Doug could work the same job, and Doug might get burnt out less quickly than I am. Like I might get burnt out quicker, or because we're coming from different places and we're looking at different at things differently. So I agree with you, Doug, and I think the clinician will help kind of figure out where you're coming from, or help you figure out where you're coming from and why certain things bother you more than other things. And it's interesting. We were doing some research and I was kind of going over some stuff that people that do this kind of work were either victims of those kind of crimes or were witnesses to those kind of crimes, whether it be SVU, whether it be homicide, narcotics, and all that stuff. And you're kind of drawn there. And so I think you see a lot of folks, especially working in tactical capacities, that saw people that couldn't defend themselves and that were not for somebody else stepping in. So it's not a far reach to say, I'm going to be that guy. When something goes down and you need an angel to kick in a door and put a gun in somebody's face and be like, hey, you're not going to get away with this, or you're trying to do just all these different things. And it takes a specific kind of mentality. And so I think a therapist, and again, I think the majority of folks would benefit from a master's level clinician. But when you start getting into other stuff like you're you're dealing with your mental health, you're dealing with substance issues, you're dealing with unresolved traumas, you're still dealing with stuff that occurred during your developmental stages in life, and you're dealing with financial issues, relationship. There's 5 million things going on. We talk about this all the time. We have yet
Yeah.
to meet a first responder or vet that's got one problem. I have been looking for that unicorn my whole fucking career, and I have yet to find him or her. Oh, it's always relationship, work, finances, in some kind of weird triangle in that effect. And then you have loss and grief kind of peppered in there. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can get kind of in the weeds with kind of looking at, like, I'm dealing with so much grief all the time, every day in, day out. But I think, like, for us, I know on our end, and we talked about it previously when we were in Boston. We were at the conference in Boston, and I met one of the girls that was following our show that we did, and they're like, "Man, you saved our lives, or you saved my life, or it was a game changer." And then I remember I wasn't having a great day that day, but I remember that cheering me up. I remember, all right, for all the bad shit that went down, here's a girl that came up. She was like, "Hey, man, I was listening to you guys. It was phenomenal. Thank you so much. It was a dark time in my life." And I remember sitting there. I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe, thank you for saying so." She goes, "I just wish the other guys were here." And this is when we were doing Trauma Behind the Badge. I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I just wish I could say like Doug and Raul and all that." I was like, "They're like 100 feet away from us right now. Let's go meet them." So remember, I went and I brought her over to you guys. But it's those little interactions that you may have day in, day out. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible. And then you get these wonderful, wonderful moments where you help somebody, or somebody says thank you, or somebody comes back. Man, what was I watching? This one, I think this cop was sitting in there and they invited this grown ass man came in, and he's like, "Do you remember me?" And the guy's like, "No." He goes, "I was a kid when I was 5 years old drowning in a pool and you saved my life."
Yeah.
And these people hadn't seen each other for decades. And this cop just, like, he just melted into this kid's. And this guy's so it's two grown men. and it's just phenomenal. So we go, please. Um, okay, some questions. Yeah, yeah. Bucket is full of different shit, definitely, and kind of just sorting through it, and again, getting an appreciation for. I think for me, what I think is important is I need to understand what I'm going through. I need to label it. Is it compassion fatigue? Is it burnout? Is it anxiety? Whatever it is. Because unless I know what it is, I can't start working on getting better. So I think that's the takeaway for what we're talking about today is I think the purpose of kind of identifying or defining it, what it looks like, what the symptoms are, is not just to be like gratuitous, like, hey, this is what this looked like, but there's a purpose in understanding what we're going through and labeling it and identifying it. It's like my body hurts. Well, what part of your body hurts? Well, kind of my knee. Well, am I going to see a dentist? No. Am I going to see an optometrist? No. I'm going to go to somebody that works on knees. Or if my ear hurts, do I go to a foot doctor? No. So it's just once we realize what we're, because you could be in a grumpy mood because you're in pain, but unless you figure out how to address the pain and what the pain is coming from or what it is, you're not going to be able to kind of address it. You know what I mean? So it's important. So
And
the other thing I would say is, like Doug said, talk to somebody, take a fucking break. We all need a break from time to time. Disconnect, unplug, do a an electrical or a social media detox, or go sit on a beach somewhere, or spend a day watching your favorite TV shows. Go ahead, Dougie.
yeah, I was actually going to say kind of the same thing. Be careful what you ask for. In the compassion area, because what drives people to this industry or to this level of care or mental health or therapists, peer teams, as you know, a lot of times people think that they see us on stage or they see us on the show and they think we got this cool gig because they'll come up to us after we're speaking. How many times does this happen, Chris? Hey, man, how do I get into public speaking? I have a story too. I even had a lady say to me one time, she goes, how did you get into this spot? She goes, I want to do this. I have a story. This was in Annapolis. And I looked over at her and I said, I don't know. I shot myself. I don't know how you can end up here. This is how I ended up here. I don't want to be here. And so I'm saying be careful because you're taking on a load. Make sure you're ready to do that. This is not glamorous by any means. Every time I speak, I say to myself when I'm done, oh my God, I am sick of fucking hearing myself talk.
Yeah,
And then I walk off and somebody, like you said, goes, hey man, thank you, man. That helped me. Okay, I got enough energy to do it one more time. If I could help you with that, it's not fun getting up there spilling all the stories of how you screwed up. So
yeah,
you got to be really careful of what you ask for and putting yourself in the position that you're not ready for, or as we use the term, stay in your lane.
yeah,
Make sure that you're staying in your lane. I'm not peer support certified. I'm the only guy on the team because I can't handle it. I'm not a good peer. I'm not the dude you should be asking for advice from. That's what I talk about and say, don't do what I did because I clearly fucked that up. I'm not in that lane, so I don't get into the peer lane. So, and it's okay. It's okay that you can't do that. You might be better over here in this industry. So it comes back to it. You got to be really sure that you are in a right place and have the right tools in your toolbox in order to take this kind of task.
yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. So somebody was asking about the PCISs, and I think Doug responded that they're going to
Yeah,
be on the
yeah.
list. I also sent out a link to because I'm on the board with the Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program. The LEAP programs are all over the country, and there's a section where you can look at where next PCISs are going to be, or for spouses or training and stuff like that. and like whether it be Arkansas, Ohio, New York, California, Florida. I don't know if Florida's on our site yet, but um, again, South Carolina, North Carolina, Oregon, I think
West
California,
Coast, West Coast.
West Coast Post Trauma is another one. That's a phenomenal program out there.
Mm.
That's a little bit expensive, uh, but I mean that's a little bit more clinical in treatment. Whereas like Virginia Leap, if you're a cop, or well, right now it's if you're a cop first responder, it's free. Like you don't pay anything. You don't. The
Yeah,
only thing you have to
same
pay is if you're working, maybe take your own time off, or if you can get detailed. But you go there for free. We feed you. Lodging is free. Fellowship. We have EMDR. We have um, trauma acupuncture. We have trauma massage therapists and family counseling. You could bring your spouse or your partner. But yeah, so
They're
definitely
amazing. They're absolutely amazing. You'll see the
game
people come
changers.
in on you'll come in on the first day and it's all doom and gloom and nobody's talking and nobody's smiling. And on the third day, like every other cop class we've ever been to, on the third day, everybody's laughing, exchanging numbers, saying how great it was for them to get that off their chest.
Yeah,
But unfortunately for us in Florida, we have a lot of people that are asking us to come be part and to come. But Florida's a big state, and we have a waiting list from hell. Like we should be doing at least 20 a year, which as you know is an insane
that's
number.
crazy. That's crazy
In
talk.
order to keep up. Yeah, that's how many we'd have to do to minimize the list, but they're amazing programs. So if you have the opportunity to get to one, yeah, they're pretty amazing. And the quality of care is amazing. Like to be part of this team in Florida, I'm part of the team because it survived first, but I don't really have an active role in teaching. But you have to go through all kinds of training in order to be part of this. You can't just come in because you got a buddy that's on the team. And so there's a great quality of care involved in it. And they're pretty remarkable. Learned about them through you, Chris. And actually, Chris's team is who came to Florida and taught us how to do it down here and got us. So, they're highly recommendable. And they're pretty amazing. I'll say that.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. Again, it's just one resource, but again, we get a lot of the folks that we see at like these programs and elite programs and West Coast Traumas and stuff like that. It's just people that have not managed that compassion fatigue or that burnout, and they
That's
just
generally it.
they're and everything suffers as a result. So, guys, thank you so much for the engagement. Raul, I think is still flying. I think either coming from Texas or something like that. But again, we are on the road all the time. Again, I just came back from Alaska. Dougie, I know you and Raul and a couple of folks were like all over the place. And I got a couple things coming up here in the next couple weeks. But as always, we're going to try to make the show. And if one of us can't make it, the other one will definitely. But if you got anything else, Dougie?
No, no, I'm good, man. It was a good conversation to have because even guys like us need to have that conversation and to remind ourselves to take breaks. Because even in this conversation, we were bitching about how busy we've been and on the road and haven't been home, much at all in the past couple months. And but one thing that works well in my house is my wife is the boss. And when she throws down the hammer, anybody who knows her, she don't play. And so, we're blessed that we are in the predicament where we can go on vacation at least once a year and we go on that vacation and we put our phones away, we put our internet away, and we decompress and we check out and we work on ourselves and we look at each other and talk to each other on vacation. And those things are important for everybody. If you're not in the spot where you can go on a fancy vacation, do what brings you joy.
Yeah.
Like I'm lucky all the way around. I can go out in my backyard and stare at the ocean. I can watch rockets launch in this. Last night I looked at the moon because the moon was just beautiful last night. The
Mhm.
harvest moon's coming, and yeah, maybe it's a combat thing for us guys who got stuck in a jungle, man. The full moon is important. Oh, I can see. But little things like that, make sure that you're doing them, make sure that you're unloading the load that you're carrying around. And this could maybe, I'm trying to give some tools and leave you with something. You know, I always use the term find your joy. Whatever it is that brings you joy in your life, if it's petting your cat, or that's Karen's joy, petting
Yep.
her, if it's riding your bike, if it's walking, if it's reading a book, whatever the hell it is, make sure that you're doing it. That will help combat some sort of fatigue. It just brings joy into your life, and joy erases trauma and pain. At least it does for me. I don't know the way, but I know a way. And one of the ways is that I focus on the things that bring me joy in my life. Sometimes it's sitting across the table from Chris Scallon for me. And I've told this story 100 times. All I need to do is spend a couple minutes with Chris, and I'm laughing my freaking ass off because he's one of the very few people that can make me laugh. And it brings me joy, and it kind of reinvigorates me and bring it up. As simple as that, bringing people into your circle to bring you some joy, or,
Yeah.
emptying off that load and going on a vacation. But make sure you do it. Be the best version of yourself so that you can be the best version for somebody else and maybe help save somebody's life. That's pretty amazing. So I leave you at that, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for stepping up to the plate, a dangerous plate, to save and help our brothers and sisters out there.
Yeah. And if you or somebody you know is struggling, don't know who to call, give us a shout. Our information's on there. So, guys, thank you so much, and we appreciate it.
All right, man.